Clear. I am excited to have this webinar tonight. I hope that you are excited to be here as you're entering into the room, and that you will be able to learn how you might be able to use the PodClear product to create better audio for your podcast. Now, I'm in Alabama where it's quiet and we're frozen, but Josh and my brain just left me. Spencer, I knew it started with an S. Josh and Spencer are in San Francisco, where the police are riding the streets of San Francisco every single day of the week. You like the old TV reference there, by the way? Josh and Spencer took time away from breaking into their code and making it work better, as they've heard from a lot of beta testers over the last few weeks. And they are getting ready to roll out version 1 very soon. It's not this weekend, but they're going to roll out a new version of their beta, and then hopefully soon, in a week or two maybe, if I can twist their arms all the way from Alabama, they will release version 1 of PodClear. Now, I'm going to tell you, I've been using PodClear for a while now, just playing around with it, and I did my episode today that aired today with Hannah. That was the very first podcast I did with PodClear. I don't know about you guys, but I was very impressed with the product that I got, especially considering the fact that I think she used the microphone on her laptop, and it still sounded as good as it did.
Cool.
So tell us, guys, what made you come up with the idea of PodClear, and then tell me some of the fun things you've learned while you've been developing the code for PodClear.
Yeah, totally. So the idea came from a road trip that Hannah and I were on maybe 3 months ago. We were coming back from my parents' house after Thanksgiving. We're listening to Dirtbag Diaries, which is like a podcast about people who basically live outside. And it was really inspiring, and the person on the podcast was interesting. He was interviewing this guest who is kind of like well-known in the community. And as we were listening to it, they were doing the interview via Skype, and it was so unintelligible. You couldn't understand what this person was saying at all. I think their internet connection was just really bad, that we had to turn the podcast off. So as we were kind of like talking about it, we're like, oh man, this is such an easy problem to solve, and I'm sure there's a solution in here somewhere. You can't use like normal Skype audio, and it's probably something that every single one of these podcasters is experiencing. Mm-hmm. We're not podcasters ourselves, but we listen to tons of podcasts. We were sort of like bouncing ideas back and forth, and then we threw out this idea of like, oh, what if we just recorded independently on both sides of the call, and then sort of brought those two ends together on our servers, and then allowed the interviewer to like download those files and then publish those. You'd get this lossless version of the audio, and it turns out podcasters have been doing that for years. It's called a double ender.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh well, I'm a software engineer. Josh is a software engineer. I was like, oh, we could totally write a piece of software that automates this whole thing, because currently, I guess, you would record on like Audacity on your side. I would record on Audacity on my side. I would then like upload it to Dropbox. Then it like go through that whole process, export it out of Audacity, then send you an email. Then you download it. Then you'd like pull it into your audio editor, like stick it on top of your track that you exported, and then try and match them up somehow, and then adjust for drift. Then export that audio after it's mixed and mastered, and then maybe like run that through some other service that sort of masters the audio, like Auphonic or something, and then you would publish it, which is hours of work, right? And you're asking your guest to go through that process with you, which most guests, if they're like notable people that you're interviewing, they don't have that kind of time, and they don't really care if you're they want their interview to sound good, obviously, but they're not invested in it like you are. So if you could make that a 5-click process for them, where it's just like a no-brainer, you send them an invite, they download the thing, and then they open it, and the rest is taken care of. That saves you tons of time. It saves them a lot of effort, and it makes you look more professional as a podcaster overall. So that was again like 3 months ago, and we quickly pulled together a prototype of that and released it to some beta users over the last 3 months or so, and then we got great feedback. We have just over 1,500 people signed up right now, 1,500 individual podcasts, cool, including some pretty awesome folks, some notable people in the podcasting community. We've gotten tons of great feedback. We launched on Product Hunt, we launched on Beta List, we launched on Launch Rock, and a bunch of these other killer startups. We were featured in a bunch of cool stuff, and yeah, it's definitely something that the community wants and needs, it seems, and we're excited to make it. And in terms of challenges, Josh can probably talk about some of that stuff.
Well, actually, like when Spencer had the idea originally and he told me about it, I think I told him he was a little bit crazy because audio is really hard, right? It's a hard product to solve, but we're getting through it. We're doing it. So there's a lot of challenges with interoperability, or having it work on Windows the same way it works on Mac is a big issue. The audio issues on Windows are vast.
Yeah.
So everybody's got different
sound cards.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, everybody's got different sound cards in a Windows unit, and so now you've got to write code that deals with a Turtle versus some other sound card.
Right.
And with a Mac, it's everything standardized, so it makes it easier. Right.
Yeah, and there's just so many edge cases there. So the whole process of engineering this has been, oh, great, we got it working, and then you try it on another operating system, and you try it on, it works on Windows 7, and then you try it on Windows 8, and then something weird happens. You're like, okay, well, now we need to solve for that edge case. So there's been a lot of those things along the way, lots of technical hurdles, but there's a reason that no one's made this type of thing before, and there's a reason that it's so necessary. And it's, they're challenges, but it's stuff that that's totally solvable in 2015. So we're pulling it together, man. We're pulling it together.
So when you started this, I'm sure you went, "Oh, this is easy. We'll get this done in a weekend."
Yeah.
So, and now it's 3 months later.
I told her, I was like, "Oh yeah, we'll have a prototype in 2 weeks." And she's like, "Really?" She's like, she sort of believed me, but then I was kind of kidding myself. It actually takes a lot longer to write a quality piece of software. We can make something work in a few weeks, but to actually make it something you can rely on, you won't lose any recordings, nothing's gonna mess up. That takes time,
So as you were working on this, and you're working on interoperability with many platforms, you're trying to figure out a way to make the GUI look well so the user interface is similar on both platforms.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you're also trying to figure out what's the model for us to move this from desktop to mobile, because Hannah said you're working on that as well.
Yep.
And what I'm surprised by is the fact that both of you have more hair on the top of your head than I do.
Maybe not for long.
So
we talk about this every night. It's a stressful process, but it's at the same time it's really fun, and there's a lot of good feedback coming from the community that keeps us going.
Yeah.
We'll see a tweet, from somebody, or we'll see a new person sign up for beta, and it drives us, right? We get excited again. So that's what's keeping the hair on our head right now, but who knows what will happen in a month.
Yeah.
Well, I know you're getting ready. You were telling me before we started that you guys are getting ready to roll out one more beta version.
Yep.
And after that, week, 10 days maybe, before you roll out version something.
No promises. I mean, we're going to roll out the next version of beta, and we're going to test that out. It's the most robust version that we've released so far. Mm-hmm. After that, we'll probably sit on that for a week or two, just to make sure there are no more kinks in the system, and then at that point we'll probably roll it out. So I would say anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks we'll probably have a version 1 out, but I'm probably going to be kicking myself for saying that in 3 weeks.
Well, this next beta release has a big feature update, which is the mixing, right? We automatically mix the files for you and try to account for drift.
Yeah.
So that's a huge update. That we've tested pretty thoroughly, but there's 3 of us testing it, but we need it to work with people who have 7 guests.
Right.
And it needs to work seamlessly. So
right.
That's what this beta is a big update. So we'll see what happens with the release. We're pretty confident, but we can't make any promises on a week or 2 weeks for release.
Right.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
Give me credit. Hey, So I guess you're going to ask Ray Ortega or somebody like that who does a roundtable to test it for you when you want to do the multiple releases.
When the time comes, we're going to send it out to Ray and a bunch of people who do these larger calls. In fact, the other day I was on Tech Webcast. They do 7. I was on a call with 7 people.
Oh my God!
We didn't have mixing available at that point. The early beta didn't have mixing; it was just independent tracks. But all of his tracks synced. He was able to download them and then put them together manually. So yeah, it's at this point it solves part of the problem, and then the mixed solves the full problem. So, yep.
Well, cool. Hey, I got 2 questions from my buddy Philip Havens of the Bow Hunting Freedom podcast. Philip, first, Philip says that you're also about a century younger than me, and that could explain the hair problem. So, thanks, Phil. He's got 2 questions for you. The first one is there a plan to release for Mac, which they seem to have a better handle on, before Windows?
So I don't think so. I think that we should release both platforms at the same time. The reason being is you're going to invite guests, right? And you don't know what platform they're on. So if you have a Mac version, great, but you might send an invite to someone who's like your next guest. You don't want to say like, do you have a Mac or a PC? And then they're like, oh, I have a PC, and then you're like, oh, great, we can't use my software. We'd rather just be across all platforms right from the get-go. If it were a piece of software that only had to function on your end, then maybe we would do a Mac release first, but I think it needs to be on both. So luckily they're both moving pretty much in parallel, so they'll both be finished and solid at the exact same time.
Well, I think there's also some issues of software release management as well. You release different versions at different times. Now you have multiple versions to manage at one time.
Right. That's right. It gets really hairy.
Versus releasing them both at the same time. So.
That's right.
Yeah, luckily we've moved to a format where we're going to be able to send auto updates. So that's the next release will provide that ability. So we'll be able to send you auto updates. It'll just kind of, every time you launch, it'll just launch the newest version. Yeah. But that's not currently in the one that's available in the beta, so this next one will offer that. So it'll make the release management a little bit easier, and then pushing out updates for just Windows, it won't be a big deal.
Right.
But we've got to get to that point.
So if you find a bug in Windows that's not in a Mac, you can push it, and it's not going to bother anything after that.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you one question, then I'll get to Phil's second question. The question I want to ask you guys is, when this new beta rolls out, sometime maybe this weekend or so, when it rolls out, so I'm understanding you correctly, number one, I'll never have to delete and update the software again.
That should be the case, yeah. So currently, unless it's a major update, unless it's like something that we're changing about the way the application interacts with the operating system, like normal UI updates and added functionality, you will not have to update ever again. But in these first few months, I anticipate we might have to roll out like, hey, this is a new version. We interact with your system differently, so you need to install this one. But okay. It'll be a mix, but you shouldn't have to do that very often.
Yeah. And then the second one is this new system. I will actually get not just the audio from your mic and the audio from my mic. I will also get a mixed version.
That's correct.
Yep.
With audio processing, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
So I don't have to have an Auphonic account.
Nope.
Well, you might need to. It depends on how much you like the audio that's coming out of PodClear, right? I mean, we're right now in this release, what we're trying to do is provide you with some good, clear audio and not do a ton of processing on top of it.
Yeah.
Because we're not sure what the community wants yet, and we can't apply one standard across everyone's audio until we figured out the things that everyone is doing.
That's right.
We don't want to mess up your audio. For instance, someone might want more, more echo than less, and more compression. We've set a standard on compression that we believe will not affect anyone's audio. But it's going to be a little bit trial and error there, and to see what the community feedback is before we set a standard.
Cool. Well, Phil has now added another question to his second question, so now he has 3. The second question was, can you define what drift is? I think I know, but I'm going to let you guys answer it because you're the techos.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so there are a couple different types of drift. The first type of drift that we experience with PodClear, it's a PodClear specific thing, is actually not technically drift, it's network latency. So when I hit start record on my machine, actually it might be useful to take a step back and explain how PodClear actually works.
Yeah.
So when you install the application, you create a session. A session is essentially like a recording session with it's a sandbox for you and your guests sort of exist in and record. Then you invite participants to that session. So all you need to invite is basically their email address. It sends off an email to all of those people with an invite code. they download the app and put in the invite code, and they're in the session with you. So they're all, you see them all in there. You see that they're connected. You see their basically status. And then when you hit record, start record, it simultaneously starts recording on every single one of their machines. So you have remote control over this entire network of computers, essentially.
And they never have to click a button after
they never have to click anything. In fact, they don't have any buttons to click, so they can't screw anything up.
Hallelujah.
So, I know, yeah. so that's basically the system. So there's some factors in that system that are hard to control. The main one is network latency. When you hit start, that signal has to go through your local internet connection to your ISP, up across the wire, then get to their ISP, then go to their local network, then hit their computer. There's a lot of process in there. That could take upwards of a second, or it could take 5 seconds. Who knows? It's variable. So that's the main type of latency. And if the start times are different, obviously that second person's track is going to be technically ahead of yours, right? It'll be short. It'll be a shorter track than yours. So they'll be speaking before you when they should be speaking after you, or whatever. So we've written an algorithm that compensates for that. And then the second type of drift is this sort of strange computer drift that happens, and you'll experience this with Auphonic. So if you do it manually do a double ender, you'll start recording on your machine, they'll start recording on their machine, and you'll do the 1, 2, 3 clap thing, and then you'll bring it into your audio editor, and you'll sync up the beginnings of the tracks, and by the end of the track, or 15 minutes later, or even 30 minutes later, the sync will be off, and you'll be like, why is this happening? It'll be off by seconds when they were within milliseconds apart in the beginning, right?
Right.
It's this weird digital thing about the way that computers encode, because system clocks aren't completely in sync. The way that systems encode audio, the way that they actually lay down the bits in order, is inconsistent, because it's at that level it's almost like physics, right? There's chemical things happening in your computer, like electrical pulses that fire 44,000 times per second. That's not always accurate, and that's what's creating this drift effect over the course of an audio file.
And there's no way to inject SMPTE code over 2 computers over a network that I know of.
There is not a way to sort of do that over the network, right? There's no way to there is a way to do that, but you'd run into other factors, right? The network latency would play a factor there. You could timestamp on your side, timestamp on their side, but then you'd have to compensate for this network effect as well. Right. So it creates a lot of complexity. This problem is something that we're solving. We have a couple different solutions for it. We have not written the algorithm for this. So the current version that accounts for network latency is going to be in this next release. And then within the next month or so, I would say that we'll have an algorithm that solves for this drift effect. Cool. And it's a tricky problem to solve, but it's an important one. So it's something we're paying a lot of attention to.
Phil's other question is, and Phil, I know the answer to this, is mobile also going to be released at the same time too? No.
Oh, no.
I've had some Skype calls with guests on iPhones and iPads, and I know that answer because Hannah was very clear.
Yeah.
You guys will appreciate this. She was very clear about the fact that mobile is down the road.
Yeah, it's down the road. We believe that, and maybe people will disagree with this, but we believe that podcasters make their podcasts on a computer, right? You've got a setup. You've spent thousands of dollars on your mic and your particular, mixer and sound card and all of these things, and you didn't invest that money so you could use, your cell phone microphone to record an episode. You know what I mean? We don't think that mobile is. We think it's important for your guests, and maybe we'll build a small guest portal that people can access via mobile. But we think that the flagship app should be a desktop app for Windows and Mac.
I think I like the idea of having a guest portal, because there are times when your guest can't be close to a desktop, or don't even have a halfway decent mic on their laptop, or their fan buzzes forever on their laptop, and then you got that problem.
Yeah. Right. In those scenarios, it would be nice to have a little mobile, a light mobile version for guest only, and that might be the next incremental step. But in terms of the main product, I don't see a full mobile release happening for a few more months.
Great. Melvin has a question. He says, hey guys, love what you are creating.
Great.
How does PodClear account for background noise during an interview? Are you going to integrate any gating?
It's definitely stuff we can do. So we have a settings panel that we can integrate basically as much stuff as we want. So if doing that signal processing on the client side is not that difficult. We just implement a few libraries and it works. But again, people might have quarrels with that. So it's possible that someone doesn't want that gate. They don't want the limiter. They don't want the noise reduction. They want raw. So we need the ability to turn that stuff on and off.
Yeah, I mean, we already have an algorithm that solves for background noise in a way. It will not be in the next version. It's one of those things that, again, we need to mess with the settings a bit until they're perfect. We don't want to provide the option to somebody and then they lose some frequency that ruins their audio. Because really, with background noise, what you have to do is look for frequencies that are outside the range of a human voice, and it's a little bit tricky to do that because you can lose some frequencies from a human voice and still have the voice, and it will just sound weird now and not like the person who was talking.
Right.
So we have to be careful with those things.
I knew on my interview with Hannah that went live this morning, every once in a while I could hear her fiddling around on the desk or with a laptop or something, and my whole goal was I'm going to leave this in an unadulterated audio fashion because I wanted people to hear the pure PodClear recording.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, being an audio perfectionist, I'm like, dang, I really wish I could take those out.
Yeah.
So So the thing is I would love to be able to not ever have to worry about taking that stuff out, and being able to negate some of that stuff with some gating.
Yeah. I think that's a totally valid point. Another cool thing that I wanted to just point out, I know it's sort of obvious in the actual product that comes out at the other end of PodClear, but when you have two or more participants and you get independent audio tracks, sometimes you'll have one person won't hit mute on their mic, and while another person's talking, they'll yell at their kids or something. And if this was a Skype recording and you were using Ecamm, you would just have no way of editing that out. It would just be something they had to deal with. If they were talking over somebody else and they were saying something interesting, that line would just be ruined. So PodClear allows for that sort of granular control, which is huge in those scenarios, especially when it becomes a conference scenario where it's like multiple people.
Well, the cool thing is as I was finishing talking to Hannah post-interview, I was watching, and it processed my audio on my side while it was processing her audio on her side, and then uploaded mine to the cloud and yours and hers to the cloud, and then downloaded hers to my computer, and it's sitting there, and I get it in a compressed file, and all I had to do was unzip it. Use gzip, and
we actually automated that too. It did as soon as it gets to your computer, you click it, it unzips it, and then it pops it open in your audio editor.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
We're glad you like that. That's the thing we're ultimately trying to solve, right? It's the whole setup and recording process, and the things that you have to do afterwards, which is give your guests some information about where to send the file, how to send the file, and they have to go through all of that nonsense. That's really the main thing we're trying to solve with PodClear. Clear audio, simple process to have guests on or co-host on. That's the main thing we're going for. And then as that problem becomes solved, and we're very, very confident that this is the thing that solves that problem, we're going to be moving into things like mobile and things like audio processing on the fly. So that's sort of like our roadmap. That's our goal, right? Is to make that process really simple.
Well, I know one of the great things about this product, in my mind, is that you will relieve from me the pressure to create the best sounding audio that I can.
That's right.
So that I can then focus on creating the best content that I can.
That's right.
And with you giving me a mixed version, I mean, I'm sitting there going, the only thing I will have to do is then cut where I want to insert a commercial post.
That's right.
And, I mean, that's just amazing. It's going to be that easy. No more need for Audacity or Audition or anything else. with the exception of if you need to add something in
cut stuff. Yeah, and we've even talked about implementing. Podcasters only really need that cut feature. If it's mixing for you, they only need to like cut out sections. It wouldn't be that hard to make a little UI that helps you with that process too. It downloads the audio, and then in PodClear you're able to trim it, and then maybe throw in some of your default intro and outro stuff. We wouldn't build out an entire audio editing suite of tools, but we've talked about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like insert commercial or insert
Well, what would be
sort of audio.
What would be cool if there was actually a PodClear channel, and with a control panel of run this spot here, run this intro here, run this outro here.
Totally.
And then so now I've got yet another track that is synced, and I just hit that stuff and it goes.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but that could be potentially really easy to do in the future. We actually had some feedback from a beta user who was basically saying that he'd like to have some keyboard controls during the call so he could basically mark the call. So if somebody, I don't know, accidentally said a curse word, or maybe there was some loud background noise, you could just simply hit a key. It would mark the file at that point.
Were you talking to John Lee Dumas?
Yeah.
Who was it that gave us that feedback?
It's
we've talked to a bunch of people. But John Lee Dumas is definitely...
Because that's the way he edits.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he writes down a little note on his... Yeah.
Now he has 3 keys, C, V, and B. And you can go back and listen to my interview with John Lee Dumas the week before, like last Tuesday.
Yeah.
And you can hear him explain how he edits, because he marks, he does 8 interviews in one day, and then comes back after dinner and edits all 8 of them in 90 minutes or less.
Wow. Yeah, cool.
And the reason why is because as he's recording, he hits C for a curse word, V for something that the guest said that needs to be edited, and B for something he said that needs to be edited.
That's
and then
awesome.
He's got all his flags all over Audition, and he's able to cut it out. So
that's brilliant. Yeah. We'll implement the same thing basically for PodClear, so that while you're recording, you've got those hotkeys that you can use, and then those will be transferred over into whatever your audio editor is as chapters or whatever it is.
That is awesome. You guys, as you continue to grow this, I'm just becoming more and more excited about what it would be for me, because hey, now I don't have to pay Adobe Creative Cloud $30 a month,
right?
Because I'll have you guys. I'll already be paying you for sessions, and then all of this stuff is built in.
Absolutely, that's it.
And at the end of the day, this really helps us, right? Because we're avid podcast listeners, and we don't have to hear bad audio anymore, right?
Really,
if PodClear propagates throughout, then all of our podcasts will sound great, and we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah,
that's right.
Well, and truthfully, that's part of the problem with listening to podcasts is the drift issues and then the audio quality issues and everything else. Skype can really suck at times, and Google can too. Their audio can really just stink at times, and now you don't have to worry about that because you're recording this conversation, you're recording your end, and I'm recording my end.
That's it.
And eventually I can put those 2 things together.
Totally, and that's the other thing is, like, you mentioned that Skype and Google Hangouts audio sucks, but the thing is, like, a lot of people are recording that way, and we've even heard people who are like, oh man, my Skype audio is not that bad.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is it's unpredictable, right? It's like sometimes if your connection's bad, it'll sound terrible. Other times it'll sound like we're in the same room. It's completely unpredictable, and it's dependent upon your guest's internet connection, your internet connection.
And it will change. And it will change during the interview. So you can start out perfect, and then by the end of it or in the middle of it, it just goes to heck in a handbasket full of diesel fuel.
That's right.
And blows up on you.
Yeah, you need something that you can count on, something that's going to be consistent throughout the entire interview, and that's exactly why we're building this thing.
Now, I know you guys are aware there are other groups like Ringer and some others who are coming out with some different products. Ringer's all mobile. I don't think they have a desktop yet.
Nope.
You guys came at it from a totally different point of thought, and that was you produce your podcast on your desktop, so you need a desktop app.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so I want to thank you guys for at least thinking about us podcasters.
Yeah.
Now, are you aware that there's a product called Boss Jock Studio for
Yes.
iPads? Okay.
Yep.
Have you thought about finding a way to talk to those guys and maybe build your mobile app into something like Boss Jock Studio? Or
Yeah, we could
license
build an
it?
integration for sure. We've talked with a few people who could be potential partners for an integration, and it's definitely something we're looking into. It's not our focus right now because we are only 2 engineers, and building the stuff takes time.
And you have to get the software out first before you can integrate it.
That's right. That's right. That's right. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting proposition. There are a bunch of, well, it's stuff we can talk about down the line, but there's some cool opportunities on the horizon for us. So integrations are definitely on our radar.
Well, I know we've got at least 7 viewers in the room, and I've only had questions from 2 people, so I'm going to remind people you can post questions in the little chat bar on the right-hand side there, and we're more than welcome to have questions. We're not afraid of questions. The guys Spencer and Josh have been answering questions for me for about 5 or 10 minutes before we actually went live. And I'm trying to remember some of those questions I asked.
All good. All good.
I do want to ask, though, and we talked about this in the podcast that released this morning with Hannah, and I'm going to ask you guys, have you thought any more about, I know you've got some good philosophy on pricing, have you thought any more about how you're going to strategize your pricing?
Yeah, we've got a few ideas for that. So we are going to do a tiered pricing model. We want to make it accessible. We want the price to be accessible, especially for small podcasters, because we want to encourage people, even who are just sort of getting into this and don't have a lot of followership. We want to encourage them to use a product that gets their audio quality up to its peak performance, right? So we are going to have an affordable tier, a middle tier for someone who's a little bit more serious, and then a professional tier for people who are podcasting every day and have thousands and thousands of listeners. We also have a pricing model in mind for networks. So if 5x5 wanted to purchase PodClear for all of their podcasters as an incentive to sort of join their network and also elevate the quality of 5x5 as a whole, we are going to be offering packages for them that gives them a reduced rate for every session that they consume. We do. Yeah. So basically, we're making this as a passion project. We're not greedy. We're just trying to make something that's awesome. We do need to sustain ourselves so we can continue to work on the project and pay for server costs and all of those things. But we want to make it a tool that everyone uses, and we don't want to make it prohibitively expensive.
Yeah. We also feel that there's probably no way to make a pricing solution that solves everyone's need, because there's a particular type of podcast that we're aware of where you're doing a daily 2 to 5 minute podcast, which doesn't fit well into any of the models we've actually discussed. In fact, I think it's hard to fit that in. So if anyone out there does something like that, don't be afraid to email us and talk to us about a special deal.
Yeah,
I think if you're doing a 2 to 5 minute podcast, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a full session in our eyes. So I think if you have some special case like that, you should reach out to us. Let us know what that situation is, and we'll discuss special terms with that person.
That's right.
And how would they reach out to you? What's your email addresses? Or
reach out to us at hannah@podclear.com. Reach out to hannah@podclear.com.
I knew you were going to do that. I was waiting for it. We'd already decided we're going to throw Hannah under the bus. If you got any questions, it's hannah@podclear.com.
You don't want to interact with the curmudgeonly engineers. You want to interact with a nice girl.
HANNAH@podclear.com. Craig's got a question. Can you explain how the system might work if a Skype call gets disconnected? Because at times it does.
Yeah. If the Skype call gets disconnected, PodClear just keeps rolling. It records everything in the middle. We're solving for some edge cases in there where if your connection to PodClear cuts off, what happens? And that's all stuff that there's a bunch of different routes that we can take there, and we're still deciding. But if Skype drops alone, they just keep recording unless you hit pause. So PodClear is a standalone app, right? It's not dependent upon Skype or Google Hangouts. So you should be just fine. As soon as you rejoin the Skype call, PodClear will just keep rolling as well. So
I loved Hannah's answer to my question along those lines, and she said, "Well, if you're telepathic, you could continue to record even if Skype is disconnected."
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, "Well, that's pretty cool." So yeah, that's the answer to that, Craig. It will continue to record unless you, as the host, hit pause or quit, and then you've ended the session.
Yeah.
Max?
The only caveat to that is if their internet connection drops off entirely and you hit stop recording, that message actually won't get to their machine, so we need to solve for that on our side.
Yeah. So they'll still be recording.
Right.
Filling their hard drive with all sorts of audio.
Exactly. We have a backup system for that right now, but it's it's a weird edge case that needs to be solved.
Yeah. Max wants to know if you've. Well, I'll just read it completely. When will you launch? Sorry if this has already been answered. I'm still at work and haven't been able to follow the entire webcast.
All good. So we don't have a definitive answer for that question, unfortunately. The answer is we are releasing another version of the beta product to a select group of individuals. As soon as we test that and make sure that it's robust, we will be launching shortly thereafter. So this is one of the last releases to our beta users, and as soon as that's done and we feel confident that it won't break on anybody, then we'll launch publicly.
So can I get you to at least say by the end of March?
You can't get me to say that.
It's probably likely, right? I mean, we're right there. It's going to happen soon, so it's likely it'll happen before the end of March. But again, we don't know what's going to happen, right?
I'm just picking with you. I know you're not going to give me a definite date. That's why you're jabbing. I used to be a reporter. If you keep asking the question, maybe you'll get an answer.
Right. That's totally fair. That's totally fair. We want it to be released as well. We're stoked that you're excited about it.
Yeah.
Well, I really am excited about this product, and I've had so many comments on Facebook when I released the link last night to the Libsyn. I don't ever release direct download links, and last night I listed a direct download link to this podcast because I wanted people to get an ear on it and let them know how good this quality is.
Yeah.
And so it was really exciting to see the compliments and folks going, "Man, that really is crystal clear audio."
Awesome.
That was awesome to hear.
That's phenomenal. Great.
Craig wants to know if the guest internet just dies, you could complete the interview via phone? ?
Yeah.
As long as they stay in front of the computer's microphone. That's exactly correct.
Totally. Yep.
Absolutely, yeah.
Exactly correct.
In fact, you can use any communication device you'd like to use, right? So if you want to use VoIP, that's fine. If you want to use a phone, that's fine. If you want to, have them on WhatsApp and you're talking over that, that's fine as well.
Or a Vulcan mind meld, or
Exactly. Exactly.
You can do smoke signals, whatever.
Exactly. Whatever, any means of communication you have, as long as it's not internet based. If they lose the internet connection, then you can still record. Well, right. I want to know. I want to know a couple of things about you guys. This is not your first go at app development? I am almost positive.
Nope. This is something we've been doing for a while. We've worked in the tech industry for the last few years, and we both met at a software engineering school. And I've run a few companies before, and Josh has made a bunch of apps before in the past. And yeah, it's not our first time, but this is definitely an industry that we're really passionate about, and it's the first time that, at least speaking for myself personally, that I'm really excited about what I'm building, and excited about the community, excited to engage with the people who are using the product. So
awesome. Well, you said you don't have a podcast. I'm going to make a suggestion.
Yeah.
You need a podcast ambassador.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah.
All right.
We will take you up on that. We'll take you up on that.
We have been talking about starting a podcast at some point. Maybe something where we're talking to podcasters about podcasting.
Yeah.
But more about what their story is, right?
Yeah.
I think we had talked about that a bit, or maybe even random podcasts.
Yeah.
But it could be fun.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because my podcast is about podcasters. So it's kind of works.
Yeah.
Now, I want to ask you the question that really has got me interested in this, and that is, I worked in radio in the 80s, and we did double enders, and I told you, but guys, we started double enders in broadcasting were just horrible because I would have to record on a reel-to-reel on my end, then they would have to record on a reel-to-reel, and then mail me or FedEx or whatever the reel, and I had to hope and pray that it didn't go through something that would destroy the audio.
Right.
Sort of like that just did.
Yeah. That's right. Got a motorcycle outside.
And then I would have to sync those two reels together.
Right.
Hope and pray they recorded at the same inches per second as I did.
Yeah.
And then match them together.
Yeah.
And you guys do this basically with the click of a mouse.
That's
4
right.
or 5 clicks, but with the click of a mouse.
Yeah.
So I really want to thank you very much for that, because you've made my life a ton easier.
Awesome.
This and a ton of other podcasters, once they get on board with PodClear, they'll be thinking, what the heck? Why has this not existed before?
Yeah, yeah.
Phil Havens has a question. Do they have plans to attend Podcast Movement in Fort Worth?
Yep, we got a booth. We got a booth.
Awesome.
We'll be there.
Well, I hope you'll see me there. So
Sweet. Yeah, we'll meet up.
And then he asked.
Come over and say hi.
Then he asked, by that time, they would really be rocking and a-rolling, and it seems like it would be a great fit given the attendees.
Yep.
Yeah, I told Hannah if she wasn't at Podcast Movement that we were going to have major problems.
Yeah.
If you're not there, you're just missing it. You've just missed the entire industry.
Yeah, we'll be there. We'll be there.
That's great. So all three of you will be there, or are you just sending
That's
the
right.
cute one?
All three of us. All three of us.
Well, good. So I don't think Hannah's a software developer. Am I correct in that?
She's not.
So how did you get Hannah involved in this project?
Well,
We
she
tricked her into
yeah. We coerced her. We twisted her arm. Now she's really excited about podcasts. We came up with the idea together, and she's amazing at community. She's amazing at making people excited about something, sharing blog posts, engaging with people on Twitter, responding to emails, and not, we're programmers, so if we get a customer complaint, like, she'll be like, well, I don't know, figure it out, we're busy. We don't want to be, fielding those emails. We want someone who's nicer than we are.
I gotcha. You gotta have a pretty face, not a pretty face in a sexist type thing, but you have to have a pretty face to the front.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And so same thing.
You can engage with people. Yeah.
Same thing in merchandising, product, and retail. You gotta have the nice label to the front.
That's right.
The label goes to the back.
Yeah, we're up till 2 a.m. fixing bugs, and if we were answering emails at the same time, we'd probably go to bed never.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, if you're up till 2 a.m., you're definitely the ugly label.
Exactly. Exactly. With the minions in the back.
Look at the beard. I mean,
No time to even shave. Yeah.
So are you hoping and praying that eventually this will slow down a little bit for you guys? You won't be up till 2 a.m. in the morning?
Yeah, the idea is to make it a little bit of a work-life balance. So the deal with software is it's all front-loaded effort.
It is.
Right? It's one of those things that you do one time, you write the thing, it takes a ton of effort to get it rolling, and then after that, it works, and then you work on sort of building the community, you iron out kinks, you build out more functionality, but it is heavily front-loaded, so we're pulling like ridiculous hours right now. So it will slow down. That is the idea, to sort of have something that is an ongoing business that provides for us without as much effort. But
yeah. That way, once you've got all the kinks worked out, then all you have to do is iron out the small wrinkles that come up later on.
Right.
So.
That's right.
And then feature requests from users, and we can start adding some cool things that people really want. We want to have Dropbox integration. We want to have integration to all the cloud services, right? So that your audio ends up there, and you don't need to have our service for that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of little things like that we want to add, and I think those will come once we're more squared away and we're in a good spot.
Yep.
Once you can focus on features and not on the actual product.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Dropbox. I am excited about the Dropbox integration because Libsyn actually allows me to move my audio from Dropbox into Libsyn.
Cool.
So then the next question is, why can't you, instead of just sending it to Dropbox,
Send it
integrating
straight
it
to Libsyn.
into Blueberry and Libsyn or wherever else.
Yeah, we've actually talked to. I talked to the CEO of Blueberry a few.
Todd Cochran.
I guess it must have been like 2 months ago. We chatted about potentially doing some sort of an integration like that. It's not something we have on our agenda right now because we see there's an extra step in that life cycle that we don't cover yet, which is editing, right? You don't want to just get the raw audio and then immediately stream it out. You want to bring it into your editor. And if we do what we were speaking about earlier, maybe a small sort of, a small audio editor where you can slice and add sounds and stuff like that, then of course we would just go straight to distribution after that. It's something to consider for sure. It'd be amazing to cover that whole life cycle, right?
Yeah, it would.
Interview, the scheduling of the interview, all the way through putting it out there on Libsyn, and you just use PodClear the whole time. That'd be incredible and reasonable, right? It would make sense.
Yeah.
You mentioned scheduling, and I know Philip Havens and I both will ask this question. I use Schedule Once. If I'm not mistaken, he uses Calendly.
Yep.
Are you working on some integrations with some of those products, maybe?
We use Calendly to do some of our beta call scheduling, and it's amazing. I don't think we want to rebuild that because it already works so well, but we might have some stripped-down version of it for ourselves. Because you don't really need. I don't know. It's something that we need to sort of look into down the road. We don't have any promises right now. You'll just be able to put in a date. It'll send them an invite, and then they can maybe confirm and then join the session. It'll include all the details for downloading PodClear and all that stuff.
I just think it'd be cool to have access to an API or something that allows me to put my schedule when I schedule them in Calendly or when I schedule them in Schedule Once.
It sends them the PodClear invite.
It sends the information to the PodClear and sends them the PodClear invite.
Yeah, it'd be amazing to contact them about that.
Yeah.
It's definitely something we've thought about doing. But yeah, it's one of those things that's a future
down the road.
Future. Yep.
But if you don't dream, you don't know what to do next. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, we talk about this stuff, all day when we're working on the current functionality. We're like, oh, what if we did? Oh, we could add this, and we have
got a laundry list.
Ideas.
I understand. Where do you keep your list at? I mean, I've got a big, huge whiteboard back here. But
it's all in Asana. We keep a massive Asana account with a backlog of ideas and stuff.
Well, I'm not getting any more questions from the audience, and I do want to ask you. Well, I want to say one thing to you. You guys would be great on a podcast.
Awesome.
Because you've got the energy, you know the knowledge, you've got a good sense of humor. So I'm telling you, you guys would be great on the podcast.
I appreciate that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And Hannah did a great job on the podcast that I did.
She's phenomenal.
So she did an excellent job. You need to keep her.
Yep, I know we do.
She didn't tell me to ask this, but increase her pay.
Yeah. We'll go from $0 to $0.50.
Double the pay.
Yeah.
Tell her.
Triple it. Why not?
Call her tonight and say, Hannah, Philip told us to double your pay. We did it.
Yeah, we don't know what we do without her, so we definitely need to keep her.
Yep.
Well, I am excited to hear you're going to roll out yet another upgrade to the beta version. And if I'm not mistaken, you have about 1,500 users on beta, correct?
Yep, we just hit 1,550. Actually, we got a few during this call, which is pretty cool.
Cool. So you are adding more users to your beta list?
And so we only have a handful of people who are actually like beta testing. The majority of those 1,550 are not actually accessing the product. So they're all signups. It's technically a wait list.
Okay.
We kept the beta relatively small to people who are going to be enthusiastic about giving feedback and okay with small kinks in the system or potentially all of the things that come with being a beta user.
Well, I want to thank you for letting me beta it because when Hannah said, I asked her, I said, do you think I might be able to record using PodClear? And I knew that getting into a beta group is sometimes a little bit difficult because you don't want it out in the wild and let somebody say something negative about your software.
Right.
And so I understand that, and I've never said anything negative about the software because I have nothing negative to say. But I was really excited when she sent me the link, and it was so simple to upload. I will say this: if you're a Mac user, you're going to have to change some of your settings for installing software from. I think they call it an unapproved installer or something like that.
Right, yeah. That's only going to be for the time being. So the notice that you're talking about is the unidentified developer license. And basically, we're not registered with Apple yet because we haven't gone through that whole process.
Save your money.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as we register, then you won't have to click that stupid button. Yeah. That's how they make money.
Exactly.
It's Apple.
And you got to pay that $99 developer license
exactly.
sometime.
Yeah.
But you know, save your money. You don't in the beta. You don't need it. When you roll out to the public, then you spend the money and get it in the App Store.
That's right.
And then give Apple their 30%.
Yeah, exactly. Happy to do that.
Joy.
Yeah. They don't make enough money yet.
Yeah. Now that does raise a question. Are you going to charge for the install, or are you just going to charge for the records?
Charge for the sessions. Yep. Monthly recurring subscription. You'll pay whatever it is, and you'll get a number of sessions. But downloading software, we'll give you a trial for free. We'll give you a session or two to test it out. Should be free to download and should be cost to use it on a monthly basis.
That's awesome. So the website's podclear.com.
That's right.
Up until the time you release version 1 or whatever you're going to call the version, the first version, it is in beta. You can sign up for the waiting list. They will let you know immediately, if not sooner, when the live version comes out. Yep. And then you'll be able to go to the App Store and download it, correct?
Yep. Actually, you'll probably be able to just download it on our website. We walk you through a whole onboarding flow.
Yeah.
You enter all your details, and then it brings you through a thing that teaches you how to install it, and then so you'll just download it straight from our website.
Great. Well, let me describe for everybody, now that we've talked for an hour almost, let me describe for everybody the process as I see it from the producer side, and then you tell me if I'm correct, and then we'll talk about how to use it, because I've never used it from the guest side, so I'll let you guys describe that.
Yeah.
So Hannah gave me the link. I downloaded the software. I installed the software. Again, because I'm using a Mac, I had to go through the process to accept that installation as something I approve.
Yep.
Once I did that, I clicked on the icon. The software launched, and from there, I typed in Hannah's email address to set up. Well, actually, I clicked Start a Session, and then I set up the session with Hannah's name and then her email address, and then from there, it sent a notice to her, and then because she already had PodClear installed, she didn't have to install the guest version of the software, and she entered in her PIN code, and then the session basically was open, and I could start recording, pause, or stop recording whenever I chose, and it would do so on both sides. Did I explain that correctly?
You totally explained it correctly. Yep.
Now, did I also inadvertently explain correctly what happens on the guest side?
Yeah, so on the guest side, like you said, she receives an email. The email just has a download link, takes them to the page, and then it gives her a guest ID. She copy and paste that into the app, and then she's in there. And then on that screen, she sees a couple of things. She sees like a checklist that basically reminds the guest, like, hey, make sure you have headphones, make sure that your mic is working. There's a little feedback like a monitor, the same one that you see on your interface. And it says, like, okay, here's how much signal you're putting through. Then it says, wait for your host to start the session. That's the last step. And then it has a little indicator that says whether you're recording or not, and it has a little clock that counts, and it shows whether you're connected to the session or not. So it's a simple interface. There are no buttons on the interface, so you can't exit the page or anything like that. And if you try and close the app, it'll let you know, hey, you're recording or you're syncing. Please don't close it. And it'll still allow you to close it if you really want to, but it'll attempt to keep you from doing that.
It dissuades you from closing it before you should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Phil asked the question, given that explanation, at what point does Skype get in the process? You have to have something to communicate back and forth.
Yeah, so you could start the Skype call and then be like, okay, I want to invite you to PodClear and get PodClear on later. Or you could just call them on the phone and say, okay, we're going to use PodClear as well, and then open up the PodClear session. Or you can send the PodClear invitation the day before and then call them on Skype and hit record on PodClear. Mm-hmm. So Skype can come in, or a phone call or Google Hangouts or whatever can come in at any point in that life cycle. It's just it's up to you.
You'll just want to have the guest and the host connected to PodClear like at some point before you start actually chatting with that person. And when you're ready to start recording, you just hit start recording. So the recording happens on both ends, and that transaction that's happening in the middle with Skype or the phone is not part of the process at all.
And it doesn't have to be Skype. It can be Google. It can be your telephone. It can be whatever. As long as you have a microphone and a computer recording the audio for your podcast and for PodClear.
Right. That would be interesting. Your audio actually just cut out when you said that last sentence.
I'm sorry.
So in the final version, I understood what you said, but in the final version, if you put this up from a PodClear recording, it actually, all of those words will still be there because we're not capturing Google Hangouts directly. Right.
That's great. So, Phil, I hope that answers your question on that. Now, guys, I want to thank you. You've been here for 59 minutes and 53 seconds.
Of course.
So, and I know that because PodClear is doing a count for me.
Awesome.
Now we just hit an hour. So I want to thank you guys for spending an hour with me all the way from San Francisco, taking your time away from writing code and probably drinking a cold one or something. So I want to thank you for that. Craig asked one more question. Are there any plans to upgrade your product so the conversation can actually take place over the podcast, over PodClear?
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. It's stuff we've talked about. Right now, it makes more sense to run in parallel because you get more flexibility that way. But down the road, it might be something that we offer. It wouldn't be a huge technical burden to make that happen. So we're thinking about it. We'd love to hear feedback on it. If it's something that you think would be a huge deal and like a huge benefit to your process, then we'd be definitely open to hearing that feedback.
I think the problems I have with that is that causes more server issues for you guys.
Right.
And the more server issues for you guys, the more possibility for glitches for me guys.
Right.
And
yeah, we feel like the players that are already in the communication field are doing a great job, right? I mean, Skype everyone uses because it works, right? I mean, yeah, there's some glitches here and there, and it's not the best for recording, but it's a good communication device. Google Hangouts, again, another really good communication device, but none of them are doing a good job recording, right? So we want to run in parallel with these people who have already solved the communication problem. That's sort of our philosophy, but we have discussed adding communication at some point, and it might be something we do. And it wouldn't be something you have to use, but something you could use.
Cool. Well, guys, I want to thank you very much for coming up with the idea. I want to thank you very much for putting bones to the program, and now just about ready to flesh it on out and send it out to the public. You guys rock. And I told Hannah that I am so excited about this product, because you will make podcasters' lives so much easier.
Awesome.
Thank you for tonight. Thank you for spending time with us. I'll send you a link to this. If you want to put it on the PodClear website, that's cool too.
We will.
It's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on my website, ShowNotesGuy.com and ShowNotesGuy.com/podcasters. And I'll share it with as many people as I can, because I'm sold on your product. And
awesome.
I'm going to let other people hear about it too. Thanks, guys. Anything you want to close with?
No, if you want to follow us on Twitter, we're at PodClear Tweets. Again, if you want to reach out to us via email, Hannah, HANNAH, @podclear.com. And podclear.com is our website. That's pretty much it. We'd love to hear any feedback on or any ideas that you guys have. If you're really jazzed about some particular feature, send us an email or hit us up on Twitter, and that's it.
Great. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye-bye.